being vulnerable unlocks a door that really gets into the real stuff. So I am in this place where I just really want to tell my truth, and I always write about exactly what's going on in my life, like right now. And I am just going through this really like empowered place in my life, and a place where I really want to talk about like my journey and how I got to here and all these things. And so I wrote a few of these songs a couple of years back, and not a couple of years, I guess it was just about a year ago. And then I wrote Outlawlove 3 days before we went into the studio. I knew that I kind of wanted to tell this journey of my relationship because I was getting ready to get married, and it was this like really just epic place in my life. So it starts out with Whisperin', which is about kind of like the beginning of my relationship, and it ends with All My Life, which was our first dance song at our wedding, that I wrote specifically for that and kind of never planned on sharing. And then I shared it, and so many people have used it for their first dances and stuff. So that was super, super cool. And when I wrote Outlawlove, it kind of just became this, it brought everything together, and it really became what I wanted to talk about. When I talked about this EP, it kind of brought everything together for me. Hilary is so funny when it comes to music, because she has been on the business side of the music industry for so long that she's like always very honest. And when she heard Outlawlove, she was like, oh my God, babe, this is a smash. Like, this sounds like radio. But it was really cool because she's honest. So I always know that I can take her word for like what she really means. But she loved it, and she was just like, this is such an empowering song, and I love the message, but it also like pumps me up. Whisperin', I wrote with two of my good friends, Brandon Day and Willie Morrison. Willie Morrison's like one of my very best friends. And so he knows our whole story from the beginning. And he was kind of like, wait a second, like when you guys first got together, what was it like? And I just put myself back into that place where we would be in a room and we weren't allowed to like talk about like our love for each other, but everyone else kind of was, or everyone else was hinting. And I realized that our story became somebody else's story. And what I wanted to do in Whisperin' was make it our story, and make this EP about our story, us telling our story instead of other people telling our story. So yeah, it's just about small town gossip and how people just want to talk. But when you got that kind of love that you just like, yeah, you can say whatever you want. But you know, I was lucky enough to find the kind of love that everyone's looking for. So if I'm lucky enough for that, you can say whatever you want. I feel like because I'm so healed, it's not as hard as I would have thought it would be. But yeah, like going back, you're kind of like, it's more just like this grateful feeling of, wow, I remember what it was like to be there. And I'm so happy that I'm on the other side and can talk about it, and talk about it in a place, from a place of healing. Yeah, chills. I mean, that came from just like real life. It was hot as hell outside, and my wife came over and like kissed me, and I was like, babe, you just gave me chills. And you know, it was like middle of the summer in Nashville, Tennessee, and it's such an involuntary thing for your body to like have chills from like someone's touch. And I just think it's such a cool just reaction. And so when I went into the writing room that day, I was writing with Breland actually, and I was like, I have this idea called chills, about it being hot as hell outside, and like your person just being able to bring on the chills. And you know, he's such a poet, and we just started going back and forth, and it was so much fun to write that song. It was through my publishing company, Reservoir, and I don't really know. We're friends. Like Bree and I knew each other from just shows and stuff. We both were on the ACMs on the same year, and we were in Vegas together. And you know, just from living in Nashville, we knew each other and were friends. And we had always talked about writing, and so our publishers got us together, and it we wrote Jealous. It was a great day. I love Leave the Judge into Jesus, just because, we're in this time where people are using religion as a weapon for homophobia, for their own homophobia. And I grew up in church and learning about Jesus, and I'm like, well, if the Jesus that I know were still on this earth, he would be my homie, there would be no issues here. And I know where I stand with Jesus. So if you have a problem with it, that's your own problem, but don't use religion as your weapon. Jesus has got my back kind of a thing. So I loved that line and kind of what it represented for me. Hilary and I were going through 90s country love songs and trying to decide on a first dance. And we were, going through so many of them, and we realized that kind of no matter what, we would have to mentally change pronouns in the song in order for it to feel like us. And I was just like, what if I just wrote a song and I didn't tell her I was going to do it. I just kind of walked into this write that I had, and I was writing with Nolan Stipe and Forrest Finn, who are two madly in love men, not with each other, but they're both in love with their respective women so much. And I walked in with this idea called All My Life, because I never in a million years thought that I would get married. I am very much growing up, I only saw love fail. I never saw it win. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to get married just to get divorced, And so I never saw myself getting married until I met Hill, and then that all changed for me. So it's kind of all my life I thought this way up until now, and now I want to spend the rest of all my life with you. And so it was a really cool day. Because, you go in with two co-writers and you're like, you want to write a wedding song? And they were like, actually, yes, that would be amazing. And we all were just vibing in the room so well. It wrote itself in a short time that day. And I remember playing it for Hilary, and I came home from the write and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I wrote our first dance song. And she was like, oh yeah, we have songs that we could use for a first dance. You write love songs for me all the time. And I'm like, you don't understand. This is the song. And so she's like, okay, yeah, play it for me at some point. So it's 2 days later. And I'm like, okay, babe, I really want to play All My Life for you. And she was like, all right, let's do it. So I actually set up a phone, because I was like, she didn't know, but I set up a phone camera. And by the end of the first chorus, she was crying, and she was like, we have to dance to this song. I totally get why you said this is the one. And so to just I think that what was so cool about writing this EP is it started out with a song in a place where I was fearful about my relationship, and it ends with a song where we're dancing in front of all of our closest family and friends. And we had just, promised forever to each other. And I just love the power that invoked, and just showing that full journey from beginning to end. Yeah, I mean, for so long there really hasn't been much to any LGBTQ representation in country music. And for me, I just think that I hope that people can finally see themselves in country music and know that they don't have to stray away. So many people grew up on country music and then realized that, they are queer or in the LGBTQ plus community and feel like they don't have a place there anymore. And I just really hope that this EP gives people who love country music and are queer a safe space within the genre to know that they belong here too, and they don't have to go somewhere else to seek, the stories of country music and see their own story within it. I feel like I started writing choruses and stuff, like when I was in college. And I had always written, like, even when I was little, I had like, two best friends, actually Cassidy Pope, who is a singer here in Nashville as well, and then Ali Tamposi, who's an insane songwriter, wrote What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Stronger and like Havana and all these crazy songs. I remember the three of us writing in my room when we were like 9 years old. But I would say that I like started to really know the process once I came to Nashville. And, I'm just getting into town, and I had written songs by myself before I got here. But what I love so much about Nashville and the songwriting community here is that it is such a community and it's so collaborative. And I actually used to sing at Tootsie's downtown on Broadway. And my very first night that I was in Nashville, I got up on stage at Tootsie's after a few drinks and sang a couple songs, and they offered me a job to start singing downtown. And so they were like, hey, come to open auditions, you're gonna get it, but the band has to do a whole process. I'm like, cool, I have nothing else to do. I just moved here, I have no friends. Sounds great. So I go to this audition, and the band leader, who was the band leader at Rippy's, Honky Tonk Central, and Tootsie's, his name was Greg Humphrey. He was like, oh yeah, Brookeeden, and then afterwards he comes up to me and he's like, honey, Tootsie's is honky tonk school, and I have a feeling you've already been through honky tonk school. He's like, what else do you want to do in Nashville? And I was like, well, I really want to learn how to write a song the Nashville way. And he was like, well, what are you doing on Tuesday? And I'm like, Greg, I have no job, no plans, no nothing. And he's like, all right, I'll see you on Tuesday. And he kind of took me under his wing and introduced me to, a bunch of songwriters here in Nashville and, how to write a song. And I'll always thank him for that. I mean, of course, I think that, when you're writing a song, it can be, from your perspective, it can be so just your story. But when you're writing a song with, let's say, 2 other people, that song becomes all of your stories. And you can see the relatability amongst those 3 people in this human experience that we're all in. And so for me, it's just the coolest thing when everyone gets on the same page and you're all writing toward this, whether it's a title or an idea or whatever it is, you're all writing toward one thing and you all get to put your stories into it. And I think it's just such a beautiful process to realize that for such a long time you thought maybe I was the only one who felt this way, and then you're in a room with 2 other people who have completely different stories but can relate with you on specific things within your own story. And I think that that's what makes an incredible song. My favorite thing that happens in co-writes, and this probably happens, in one of every 20 co-writes, is that I'll have an idea and I'll sing it into my phone, and I'll come in and there's somebody messing around on a guitar and they're playing the same chords that I sang my little voice memo to. All of a sudden I'm like, wait, what chords are you playing? And then I put on my voice memo and it's the same. And that's always when it's going to be a magical write, is when, you're already kind of on the same page without even speaking about it. And that's when you go, wow, songwriting is truly magical. I think the best advice for songwriting is just to be honest, to be vulnerable. I used to be so afraid to be vulnerable in writes and really tell my story. And I think that being vulnerable unlocks a door that really gets into the real stuff. I would say 1, Mama's Broken Heart. I just love how off the rails that song is and just how blatantly honest it is. And also just talking about the different, the generational things that happen. I love that song so much. I love Unanswered Prayers by Garth. I think that it just tells a story of, sometimes you want something so badly and then you realize later, that's not God's plan. And I think that's just a beautiful journey to go on, and that realization is awesome. Beautiful by Christina Aguilera. I just remember hearing that song for the first time and being like, wow, there's so much beauty in that song, and there's beauty in the imperfections. And that I like to take that into my songwriting. Bye Bye by Jody Messina. I just also love the like free to be me. I'm leaving everything behind and I'm gonna go and like live on this road on my own. And I love the independence in that song. And probably Strawberry Wine. That song is just, it doesn't matter what audience you're singing that song to, people feel it and it emotes such emotion. Everyone has that story of like when they feel like they lost their innocence, and kind of it just has that beautiful nostalgia that is so remarkable in songs. Yeah, in the beginning of June of 2021, I got a phone call from Trisha Yearwood, and she was like, okay, it's the 30th anniversary of my song, She's in Love with the Boy, and I've always wanted to do something to change the words, because from the beginning of my career, from the very first show that I sang it at, I've had people come up to me after the show and say, shh, don't tell anybody, but I sing He's in Love with the Boy, or I sing She's in Love with the Girl. And she's like, I've always wanted to honor that in some way, but I've never really felt like it was the right situation until now. And Hilary and I had just gotten engaged, and Hilary worked with Garth and Trisha on their record label. And you know, when you meet Garth and Trisha, it's not like I ever went up to them and was like, hi, I'm Brookeeden and I'm a country singer. You know, like whenever we're around them, it's very chill, and I don't talk about my music with them. So Trisha, you know, kind of seeked that out on her own, which I thought was super, super cool. And she was like, you know, it's Pride Month and it's the 30th anniversary of She's in Love with the Boy, and I would love to be able to make this song for everyone. How about if we did that at the Grand Ole Opry? And I was like, are you sure? You know, and she was like, yes. She's like, you know, we all say love is love, but we can't just say it, and like we have to mean it, and I want to stand in my allyship. And I was just like, yes, like I'm terrified, but yes. And so we, you know, we went into rehearsals at the Opry that day and figured it out literally like 2 hours before the show. And she switched the words on that like last verse on her own, like without telling me, until we were on the stage. So she surprised me with like an entire different verse of like, she's like, Brooke looks at Hilary like I still look at you. And it was just such a cool moment. And before we got on stage, I was like, you know, we were kind of like praying together, and I was like, hey, here's to not getting tomatoes thrown at us tonight, you know. And we walked off stage and we were like, you know, the crowd was so wonderful, and no tomatoes were thrown, and it was just such an incredible act of allyship, like not just saying that you're an ally, but really standing in that and owning it. You know, I think that's so important in country music right now, is, you know, to show that these country music icons are on the right side of history, and to show that, you know, it's not just a safe place at my shows, but at Trisha's shows and Garth's shows. And so after that Opry performance, we were backstage, and Trisha was like, okay, well, now that that's done and out there, like, what are we doing with this wedding? Like, am I gonna be a flower girl? Am I gonna officiate? Like, what am I doing? And I'm like, would you officiate? And she was like, hell yeah, like I would be so honored. And so Hill and I talked about it and called her up, and we're like, hey, the offer still stands. We would love to have you officiate our wedding. And she was just the best, and she's just the most natural, witty person, and to have her officiate our wedding, and Garth sang us down the aisle to Make You Feel My Love, and it was just the coolest. Like, I would have bet you $1 billion that would have never happened. And so the fact that, you know, two country music icons were not only speaking about allyship, but standing in allyship, it was just the most remarkable, heartwarming act, truly. And we were just so proud that they were willing to do that. It's just so cool. And like, you know, Garth is the GOAT, and for him to be like, you know, we asked him later on, it was like, we were at Trisha's just like talking about the ceremony and what we wanted her to say, and she was kind of like, you know, learning more and more parts of our story. And then Garth came home, and Garth is like, we're like, wait, are you coming to the wedding? And he's like, well, yeah, like, as long as I'm invited. And we're like, well, yes, you know, if you're gonna be there, would you sing us down the aisle? And he was like, yes, but you know I'm expensive. And we were like, yeah, we know. And he's like, I get paid in chocolate chip cookies, so, you know, make sure there's a lot. And we're like, okay, we got you. So we baked him chocolate chip cookies, and he sings down the aisle. It's crazy.